too. Looks... See anything yet?
Yep, looks good.
Looks horizontal?
Yep.
Let's check the lighting on me to make sure it's even. I don't see it. I guess I have to refresh the page, right?
Yeah, it's up.
All right, I'm going to refresh it.
A little, yeah.
Oh, okay. It's still wiggly because it's delayed. Oh, I see some thumbs up. That must be people.
Yeah, 83 people.
What? 83 people? Why are you people here now? It's early. Oh, it is 3 o'clock. Okay. I'm waiting just for the delay to check on the lighting to make sure that I don't see myself yet. Oh, there I go. Okay, how's the lighting? It's a little bit, that's not bad, a little bit hot on one side. No, that's all right. What do you think?
I think it looks, wait, hold on, I think it looks fine. Oh, yeah, looks good.
Okay. Is it 3 yet?
Yes.
Okay. It's 3. And here we are with another episode of Live Fly Tying. It's Wednesday. It's the Wednesday session. And I hope everybody's doing well. Thank you so much for tuning in today and for giving me an excuse to tie all these flies, because sometimes I get behind before the season starts. And I have to practice these flies. I don't just sit down and tie these flies. You know, I do practice them so that they look halfway decent when you tune in. So anyway, today we're going to tie a rusty spinner, and we're going to tie 2 versions. I'm going to tie a Compara spinner version, which is an older pattern developed by Cucci and Nastasi back in probably in the 70s or 80s. It's still a really good pattern. I'll show you one. How close I can get. I think I can get about this close. So that's a Compara spinner. I like these Compara spinners because you tie them, and we'll do this, but you tie them with 3/4 hackle. In other words, you tie full hackle all the way around, and then you trim the bottom flush. And so this gives you, from underneath, it gives you the profile of a spinner, but it also gives you a little bit something sticking up that you can see. And then if the fish get really, really fussy, which they sometimes do during spinner falls, I've found that sometimes, especially later on in the spinner fall, anything that's sticking up at all is going to put them off. At least that's what I've kind of observed. You know, it's hard to be scientific about this, but I've put orange parachute posts on flies and white parachute posts on flies, and I honestly haven't done as well when the fish get really snotty as a completely flush floating fly. But of course you can't see those very well at all, so you have to just strike to the rise and hope that it's a fish. But the nice thing about this Compara spinner is that you can actually fish it as a dun, because it's got an upright wing. And when the spinners first fall, when these mayfly spinners first fall on the water, they're often, their wings are upright or they're tilted a little bit. Sometimes they fall over to one side. So the fish aren't always seeing just a perfect flat spinner in the water. And of course that gives you a little bit of a sighting area to see. And if the fish get really fussy, you just take a pair of scissors, and you should have a pair of scissors when you're on the stream to trim flies. Then you can just trim this hackle top and bottom. I'm already got it trimmed on the bottom, but you can trim it both ways, and then you've got a completely flat spinner. So it's a very versatile fly. It's very durable, and it's quite easy to tie for a dry fly. So that's the main one we're going to do today. And then for the PhD version, it's actually not that more difficult, but for those of you who want to go a little further, I've got a different fly, which is a kind of a sparkle spinner. It's tied with the same body as the compare spinner and the same tails, but this one has a sparkly wing. It's a mixture of EP fiber, and I throw a couple strands of flash in there. So anyway, those are the two rusty spinners we're going to tie today. And Julia, are there any questions before we start, or comments? Read me the comments.
Not yet, but Tanner did say nice trout bum quilted snap.
Oh, thank you. The trout bum quilted snap. Yeah, is that what I have on? I love this. I love this shirt. I practically live in this quilted snap. It's really, really cozy and comfy and fits well, and it's really nice. So thank you, Tanner. No other questions? No other comments?
Just a lot of people saying hello and how excited they are. No questions yet.
Okay, all right. So why don't we start tying? Any questions about spinners in general? Everybody know what a spinner is and all that stuff? If you don't know what a spinner is, buy one of my books and learn about it. No, the spinner is a version of the mayfly that has molted after the fly is hatched. It molted from the dun. They come back in the evening, usually in the evening, sometimes in the afternoon, sometimes in the morning, and they form these big flights over the riffles, and then they fall to the water, and the females drop their eggs to the bottom, and the females and the males die, and they just float down the river, and they can't even hold their wings up anymore, so the wings just kind of go flush to the water, and they float away and die. And sometimes they get sunk, where you might want to fish a sunk spinner, but often they'll stay pinioned in the surface film. So that's what a spinner is.
Okay, we have a couple questions.
Okay, questions?
Jim Weatherwax wants to know, if I can't find dubbing locals and want to make my own with cat fur, is there a breed you would suggest for these colors?
I don't know of any rusty spinner breeds of cat, but there's some of the cream ones would make a nice gray fox spinner for the gray fox mayfly or the PMD, and a nice gray tabby would make really good dubbing for a Siphlonuris or gray quill spinner. Yeah.
Great. Roger Bird wants to know if it's cold in Vermont because it's 85 where he is in Texas.
It's warm-ish today. It's probably 40, Julia?
Yeah, 40, 45.
Yeah. It's kind of cloudy and warm-ish. We're supposed to warm up a little bit.
Okay, the third question is from Tim Glass, and he wants to know what time of year would you fish, I'm assuming, this fly?
Well, the size 14 that we're going to tie today, Rusty Spinner, imitates, one thing it imitates is a Hendrickson spinner, which would be the month of May in the eastern United States, east of the Mississippi. And then there are a bunch of, it would probably be pretty decent for an imitation of the Western March Brown, which is an early mayfly. But anytime there are mayflies on the water, which could be from April through November, these flies will work. The thing you want to do is you're going to have to change the size and the color of the fly. But the fly I'm going to show you today, we're going to tie a rusty spinner, but you can change just the body color. You can keep the wing color the same pretty much, change the body color, and you can imitate nearly any mayfly that lives in trout streams. So it's a type of pattern. We just happen to be tying the rusty spinner, but could be Could be any species of mayfly, down to a little tiny trico.
Great. The other question is, I think you pretty much answered it, but in case you want to add on, Zach wants to know, when do spinners hatch?
Spinners don't hatch. Spinners fall. Mayfly nymphs hatch into what we call it, the fishermen call it dun, D-U-N, and that's the thing that floats on the water, and then that flies away to the trees, and in a day or two, they molt once more, and they come back to the water and lay their eggs. So spinners don't actually hatch. Spinners fall. They're coming back.
Great. Wilson wants to know, is a parachute fly imitation a spinner imitation?
It could be, yeah. A parachute fly could be, because that parachute hackle kind of gives you the impression of the spinner wings. Yeah, you could use a parachute as a spinner. Again, sometimes I find that upright posts will put fish off and they'll refuse it. But I've used parachutes often during spinner falls. Yes, good old parachute Adams. If all else fails, you can try that during a spinner fall. Yep.
And this is kind of related, and you might not want to go too much into it, but Eric is wondering that he's going to help doing a Healing Waters online tying session. Any advice to doing the sessions, I'm assuming virtually, that you weren't expecting?
No, and I don't want to get into that here. Most people.
Mike wants to know, what size hooks do you prefer to tie this fly?
Well, this fly I tie on a 14, 16, and an 18 because we have where I fish in the east, we have a bunch of rusty spinners. We have them in 14, 2x long. They could even be on a 12. Some of the Hendricksons are pretty big. And then the 14s, the 16s, and the 18s would be for what's called a paralep or little blue quill. Lots of names for it, but it's about a size 18, really skinny, brownish colored fly with a dark dun wing. But for this fly, I tie in 14, 16, 18.
Great, and that kind of answers the next question from Bert, which is, what sizes should we have in our box?
Well, it depends on where you fish, but I would never go anywhere in the world without 14, 16, and 18 rusty spinners. I would never go anywhere because it imitates the spinners of so many different mayfly species. And then I would have some also with tan bodies and some with olive bodies. And yes, there's some spinners that are white and there's some that are gray. But if you got a kind of a dirty tan and a rusty and an olive, and you can cover a lot of different spinners. Not exact imitations, but close enough. Very close enough.
Great.
Okay.
Dane wants to know, do you ever tie with wally wings and flatten out the wings?
Wally wings? Did he say, I don't know what wally wings are. Sorry.
I don't know either. All right. Well, sorry, Dane. Okay. Bobby wants to know, and then I think we should probably get on to the actual tying, but you are getting a lot of hellos from various people. But Bobby wants to know, Tom, will you ever fish Oriskany Creek again? And did you have a favorite fly when you did?
We don't talk about that stream.
Understood.
But a rusty spinner would work there. Okay. Avert your eyes because if not, you're going to get really dizzy. Because I have to reposition this camera or this phone. And thank you very much for the gentleman who emailed me and told me how to do manual focus on the iPhone. I didn't know that. And I very much appreciate that tip. That I forgot your name, but the gentleman who emailed me that tip, so appreciate that. Okay, so look away, don't watch, because you're gonna get really dizzy. I want to move this. You ready? Here we go.
Tom, just FYI,
Yeah.
clarified that wally wings means split
split feather flattened. I'm still not sure what he means, but okay. I do have a split flattened thing that I do. I don't know if that's a Wally wing or not. Oh, I gotta raise this up. Hang in there, everybody. Why did that go? Did that go horizontal? Did that go vertical?
No, it's horizontal. It's just a little shaky.
Oh, it's vertical here with me. It's upside down. That's weird.
No, it looks normal.
Okay. You sure it looks normal?
Yes, it's actually quite clear.
Okay. That's funny that it... Oh, the bubbles are getting in the way of me manual focusing this.
The people who are speaking, that it looks good from their point of view, too.
Okay. I got a problem here. That looks clear, doesn't it? Oh, it won't let me. Okay. I don't know. I might not be able to manual focus when I'm live like this. Yeah, it's not letting me. Okay, but it looks clear?
Yes.
All right. Okay. I'm going to turn on one more light. There. How's that? Okay, so here we go with the rusty spinner. So the first thing I am going to do is I am going to take a 2x long dry fly hook, size 14. Now, you can tie these on a regular dry fly hook if you want. But the 2x long, I think, just looks a little nicer. And it allows me to get that long, skinny body. How does that hook look? Is it in focus? Oh, I got to get my doodad. I got to get my doodad here. There, that look better? That's so funny that it's vertical on mine, but it's not vertical on yours, right?
No.
All right.
That's perfect.
Okay.
That's what everyone was asking for.
Okay. Now, I noticed something last night when I was looking at some pictures of some rusty spinners, and I told everybody, I think, to get brown thread. And I realized that the rusty spinners that I fish have lots of yellow in the body. So what I did was I'm going to tie this with yellow thread. Now, it really doesn't matter. But since the fly has some kind of yellow highlights in it, I thought I would tie this with yellow. So here we go. So I'm going to start my thread. This is 8-0 yellow. And then I'm going to go back to the bend, almost to the bend. I'm going to stop a little short of the bend. And I'm going to put a bump of dubbing on here. Now, very important, the dubbing that you use is pretty important here. you need a really fine dubbing. My favorite is the ultra-fine synthetic dubbing, but I didn't have any, and I can't run out to the Orvis store and get some anymore. So I'm using some natural beaver. Beaver and rabbit are really good, but you need a very fine fiber dubbing without guard hairs. That's the most important part of this fly. Okay, so watch how little dubbing I am going to use. I am just gonna barely get some fuzz here in my fingers. You probably can't even see it there. You see how I just kind of dirtied that thread, and then I'll put a little bit more on there. But again, I'm just taking the finest amount and I'm putting a lot of pressure on there. And then I am going to wind this back a little bit, and I'm going to form a little bit of a ball there. And you can even have a little taper where it's a little skinnier behind, and then you can move forward and kind of build up that ball. The most important thing here is don't build up any thread right in front of that bump. So don't build up any thread here, because you're going to use that bump to split the tails on this fly. So you don't want, if you build up thread there, you're going to build up a little ramp, and then the tails aren't going to split. So now that I put all my materials behind my background, this material is called Coq de Leon, and these are spade hackles, and they are very long and stiff, and they make great tails because they have a little speckling to them. Now, you don't need to have Coq de Leon feathers for tails. You can, from a normal chicken neck, if you come into the side, you'll find some long, stiff fibers. Those are the spade hackles. They're pretty wide. Does that show up okay? I'm having trouble because my camera is my view is vertical for some reason. Does that show up okay?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
And so I got this Coq de Leon feather. I'm going to strip all the kind of the weak fibers from the bottom of it. I'm just going to get rid of them. Don't need them. Just going to get rid of them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull down 3 fibers, or 2, or 4. As Harry Darby used to say, if the fish could count, we'd all be in trouble. So I got 3 fibers there, separated. And I'm just going to grab them in my hand and pluck them. And then I'm going to start on the near side. Now I'll start on the far side. So let me rotate this so you can see it better. And I'm going to just place those right in front of that. Oh, they should be about as long as the hook shank, maybe a little longer. I'm going to place them up against that bump. And then I'm just going to lay them in there with 2 turns. And I can futz with them a little bit. And then I'm going to do, actually those are too short. So if they're too short, you can just give them a little pull, make them longer. And then I'm going to take 3 more fibers from that Coq de Leon. And I'm going to I gotta do more yoga if I'm gonna be working behind this camera like this. So I got 3 more. Gonna just pluck them, or you can trim them, but plucking is easy and keeps them together. And now I'm gonna put them on the other side. make them the same length. You can eyeball it. Normally I wouldn't tie this upright like this, but I'm doing it so you can see it. And then just let that thread go back against there. And there's all sorts of fancy ways to split tails. But I find that just tying them in like that works better. And then I'm going to just wind forward to bind those fibers under. If they start to go haywire on you, just pull them up and do that. And I'll come up to about there. Then I'm going to trim them. This is where you want to start using your finer scissors. Okay. Now, if you're worried about those, other things you can use for these tails, you can use stuff called fibbits. It's a synthetic. It's a nylon. I don't like fibbits as much. I find that they're actually not as stiff as the natural hackle fibers, and they're real slippery because they're nylon. They're real slippery and they're hard to tie in. I think it's easier to work with natural fibers. So there's my nice split tails. I think you can probably see those okay. I can't because my clamp's in the way here. And if you're insecure about those tails, you can put a teeny drop of head cement there to hold them in place, but they're pretty much going to stay. All right, so I'm just going to cover the shank with thread just to make sure things don't slip. And then I'm going to come back to almost the end, not quite. And I'm going to do the same thing with some more dubbing. Oh, there's my bunch. So, again, I like to kind of fuzz this stuff up like this. And then I'm going to adjust that light. Getting in the way. I'm going to get you better light here. So you just pull just the smallest amount. See how little I'm using there? And you start with a really fine bunch of dubbing there. You can wax this thread if you want. You don't need to with this fine dubbing. I'm going to scooch it up a little bit. And then I'm going to give this just a slight taper. Julie, you still there?
Still here.
No questions?
We had one question, but Phil answered it in the feed.
Oh.
Otherwise, people are just intently watching.
Well, hopefully they're tying along. Everybody, I'm going to come to your house and make sure you're tying along. I'll wear a mask, I promise. And, I'm kind of working this and moving it back and forth a little bit so I get that little taper, but not much. Notice how thin that dubbing needle is, or dubbing needle, that dubbing bunch. Dubbing noodle, not needle, noodle. There's my dubbing noodle. And now I'm just going to wind. I'm going to go back to that ball and hopefully things will line up. I'll take my first turn of dubbing and I'll, hold those tails, preen them to make sure they're going to stay in place. And then I'm just going to, and when you're winding dubbing like this, you find if you want to down the dubbing, you can put more pressure on it, and then as you get toward the front, if you want to get a little bit of a taper, just kind of ease up on your tension and you'll get a little bit heavier body. But there isn't much taper in these flies. They're pretty skinny all the way up. So now we've got our tails in our body, and now all we have to do is put the hackle on. And you can use lots of stuff. lots of different kinds of hackle. I use a lot of just neck hackle from a cape, but you can get these Whiting 100s where you get enough feathers to tie 100 flies, and they're sized, which is cool. So, you know, you get some for 14s, and you get some for 16s, and you get some for 18s, and these will often tie a couple sizes. But these Whiting 100s are great, and they wind really nice, and you can probably get 3, 4, 5, 6 flies out of one of these saddle hackles. I like neck hackle for this particular fly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure my hackle, and I want the hackle on this fly to be a little longer than on a standard dry. I want it to be about 2 times the hook gape or gap. So that looks about right there. And I'm pulling 2 feathers from the same place on the cape so that they're going to be nicely matched. And then for your dry flies, you want to find the place where the web, this is the web in the center. Let me point that out with something old. This is the web that's in the center there, where it's kind of more opaque as opposed to translucent. You want to come up to where your web almost disappears. You don't want to use much web in a dry fly like this. So I'm going to come up to about here, and I'm going to stroke these fibers back like so. And then I'm going to cut them about there, a little shorter. And then I am going to come in and, what did we call that the other day? Nubbin something or other? Nubbins? Phil would know. I guess it was some song by Queen. I was never a big Queen fan, so I had no recollection to the reference. Sorry, Queen fans. No, are there no questions? Is everybody?
No, it's still no questions.
Wow, this is weird.
People are just busy tying.
You sure it's working? We sure we're broadcasting?
238 people watching.
Roger Bird, are you there? Are you tying, Roger? Okay, so I just shortened those up a little bit while you didn't see it. And I like the dull side. The hackles have a dull side with a curve and a shiny side on the outside of the curve, and I like the dull sides to be facing forward. So when I tie these in, I'm going to have the dull sides on top. And I am going to tie in those little nubbins and work forward, kind of give myself a nice even base with thread.
Tom, we do have a question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between cape and saddle hackle?
Oh, I'll show you. They're from different parts of the chicken. This is from right up around the back of the head. That's a cape, and the eyes are like right here. So it's kind of that part of the chicken. The head's going to be right here, okay. And this is a saddle, and the saddle is the saddle of the chicken. So this is the neck of the chicken. Where you see those, you'll see those hackles in a live chicken. And then this is the saddle back here that goes down over the wing. And saddle hackle is longer and sometimes easier to wind, but you usually only get 1 or 2 sizes out of a saddle. Whereas with a cape, you get a size range down to like a size 28 up to a size 10 or 12. And this saddle will probably tie only 1 or 2 sizes. So that's the difference.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to wind the hackle. If I can find my hackle pliers. Ooh, my super glue got knocked over too. That's no good. All right, so I got to find a pair of hackle. Oh, here's a pair. And I just kind of pull those feathers up like that, and I take the one that was on top, and I grab it with the hackle pliers, and just wind it. And I try to get it to flip so that the dull side is forward. And sometimes you have to kind of back it up and give it a little tweak to get it to go the right way. And then I'm just going to try to wind this first hackle kind of straight up and down. A little trouble getting in by the phone here. You don't want these too close together because you're gonna put another hackle up through there. Now, if you were using a saddle and you were only doing one, then you wouldn't have to do what I'm doing here. And you can kind of stroke these back a little bit to make sure that they don't wind under each other. So you get a nice straight up and down on the hackle. The fish do not care a whit about how your hackle looks, but you do, right?
All right, Tom, we've got a question from Scott.
Yeah.
Is there a trick to using hackle pliers so that the tip of the feather doesn't break off? I have about 50% break off when winding hackle.
Yeah. So Scott, it can be one of two things when your hackle breaks a lot. One is that you've got a burr in your hackle pliers. Yeah, so you might take a look and see if there's a sharp edge on your hackle pliers in the front, and you might take a piece of really fine emery cloth and try to remove that burr. You don't want to go in too aggressively, but sometimes the edges are just a little sharp. So just take an emery cloth and polish it off. And it could also be that your hackle's brittle. Some hackle just breaks easily, and I don't have a good solution to that other than get some other hackle or wind with your fingers. But yeah, it does happen with certain feathers, and so it's one of those two things. Either your hackle's really brittle, just from the genetics of the chicken, or you got a little burr in your hackle pliers. You could put a little. You could put like a little rubber. Like that rubber adhesive. You could put a little dot of rubber adhesive or a little silicone adhesive on the jaws of your hackle pliers to see if that helps.
Okay, Tom, we have a couple questions that are pretty much asking the same thing, and that is, why do you prefer to wind the hackle instead of using the rotary feature of the vise?
Because I'm not good enough with rotary, and if I do rotary, I have to half hitch, and I have to move my bobbin out of the way, and it's just the way I've learned. And I keep telling myself when I grow up, I will learn how to tie hackle rotary, and it's one of those things that I'm going to get to because I think it's a pretty cool way of doing it, but I just haven't gotten to it yet. I may have some time in the next few weeks, though, to try it. And then I got my second hackle, and I'm just going to wind that through, trying to make it stick straight up and down so that when my buddies see this fly, they're going to say, "Ooh, Tom ties a nice dry fly." That's the only reason, because the fish don't care. As long as you got a semblance.
Okay, Tom, we've got another question.
Okay.
Norway.
Sorry?
Kent wants to know, what do you think about using Antron as wing
Antron is a wing material for spinners. Doesn't float very well. I like it for shucks. We're gonna tie a the next fly we tie is going to use some wing material like Antron, but it doesn't float that well. So yeah, you could use it, but it's not going to float that well. So, okay, so I've wound that second hackle through there, and that looks pretty good. Those hackles are nice and even, and I'm just going to trim that. Don't forget, don't crowd your eye so that you have room to whip finish. And then here's my hackle guard. I'm just going to pull these back. I'm not going to wind back on those hackles, but I'm just going to get them out of the way while I take a few more turns to secure those hackle tips. And then I'm going to whip finish. If I can find my whip finisher. It's stuck behind.
I've got a couple questions while you're doing that.
All right.
Is why do you use 2 feathers for the hackle from Bert?
I just find that if I use one saddle, I can't wind the saddle back and forth over itself, and if I want a nice dense hackle, I haven't figured out how to do that. With you could take a saddle, a long saddle, and cut it and tie it in twice, but I just haven't found a way of getting that nice classic Catskill style hackle with using one feather and getting it really dense like that is. And it's also just the way I learned to tie dries. I learned before we had genetic hackle.
Great. And the second question comes from Tim, and he's asking, is there a fly pattern you've always wanted to tie but have not had the time to learn?
No.
Or maybe not learn, but had the time to tie it.
No. Not really. I mean, I had my full dress salmon fly period, and I tied a few game changers last year, and I tied a couple of difficult flies like Lynch's or whoever's the D&D, which is a very difficult fly. But no, there isn't a fly that I've really wanted to tie that I haven't tied. If I really wanted to tie a fly, I've tied it. Fly tying is not that hard. You guys aren't looking, but I'm going to trim this a little bit because there's just a few hackle fibers. I don't like where they are. And I can't do it in front of the camera. Okay. So, we've got a full, you would probably call that a variant, a long hackled fly. So now what I'm going to do is just take my bigger scissors, and I'm going to crush this hackle a little bit so I don't have to trim too much of it out of the way, because I want that density of hackle there. I'm just going to crush it with my fingers, and then I'm going to come in and trim it off flush with the bottom.
Hey, Tom, we have a dubbing question from Mark.
Yes.
You've got your noodle and you start wrapping and realize you've made the noodle too long. How do you correct it?
You just back up and pull it off. You just back up, Mark. You just back up your dubbing, and just tweak it with your fingers a little bit. So there is the completed Compara spinner. It's a pretty elegant fly. It lands really lightly on the water, doesn't spook fish. It's very durable, and it floats really well. So any questions on that particular fly?
We have a couple.
Yeah.
Zach's wondering, how often do you fish with spinners? He says that he'll see them, but that he doesn't feel like the fish like them.
How often do I fish with what?
With spinners.
Well, I fish with spinners when I see fish taking spinners. You know, it's not a fly you kind of prospect with. Although fish are often looking for spinners, and I have good luck prospecting with spinners, but they don't float that well, and they're better flies to prospect with. So if you don't see spinners on the water, and you don't see fish eating spinners, then you're not going to have much luck with them. So it's kind of one of those opportunistic things where you have to wait, right, until the spinners come down. And sometimes it's very annoying because they don't come down when we want them to. All right.
So, couple more questions.
Okay.
Keith wants to know, is the pattern that you made a Catskill pattern or just a generic pattern?
Well, the guys that developed it were mostly Cucci and Nastasi, were mostly Catskill anglers, although they fished all over. But I would consider it a Catskill pattern, yeah. Yeah, I would consider it a Catskill pattern. Okay, now we're going to tie the advanced not the advanced version, just a different version. For those of you, you guys still hanging in there? Of course, if you don't want to hang in, you don't have to hang in, right? You can just go. That's the nice thing about these live things is you can leave and I'll never know, and I won't, and my feelings won't be hurt.
That question about when to use them, Zach's asking that he's seen a lot of spinners, but that the fish don't bite them. Do you know why that could be?
No, that happens sometimes. I've seen it too. It happens sometimes, and it's very annoying because I catch my biggest fish of the year on spinner patterns. I catch bigger brown trout on spinners than I do on streamers. But I'm looking for fish eating spinners. I'm looking for the right places where fish might eat them. The other thing is that you have to be careful because when fish are eating spinners, the rises are very subtle and they don't make a big splash, and you might not see the fish, and they're sometimes going to be off in shallow water or in pretty shallow riffles eating the spinners. So just because you take a quick glance at the water and you don't see fish eating them doesn't mean they aren't. Sometimes you have to really study the water and look. Other questions?
Right. This is unrelated to the specific fly, but Roger Bird would like to know, is there any way that you could tie your cased caddis fly sometimes?
I don't know, Roger. That's kind of a secret fly. Hey, stay on topic, Roger. Come on. Yeah, we'll think about it. Okay, let's tie the other fly. So we're gonna do it. We're gonna start it the exact same way. We're gonna start the thread, same thread, 8/0 yellow. Go back to the bend. Excuse me. I'm going to unwind a little bit, and then take just a little tiny bit of dubbing, squeeze it really hard. You guys can't tell. I am putting as much pressure as I can on this dubbing. And then I'm just going to grab a little more. Again, it's really just a little bit of fuzz. That's the secret to dubbing, is really small amounts and really tight. All right. And then I am going to make my little nub there. Build it up just a bit. That might be more than I like, but too bad. And again, don't build up any thread right in front of that bump. And then I'm going to grab some Coq de Leon. I guess that's 3. I don't like those. I'm going to use this one. There's 3. Put them on the far side. I'll do it the normal way this time. And you know what? If they don't set right when you first put them in, just redo it. If you don't like the way they look, just do it again. I don't like the way those look at all. There may be something wrong with my bump there. That's better. A little better.
Okay, Tom, we have a couple questions.
Yeah.
This one, I think it's just a throwback to the one you just did, but they're asking why you cut the hackle. Is it to stop penetrating surface tension?
Because I want this fly to float low in the surface film the way the spinners do. I don't want the thing riding high in the water. I don't want it riding up on the hackles. I want it the hackles are to imitate the wing. They're not, they help flotation, but you really the hackle fibers make a really good imitation of a spinner wing. So, and I want that to be flush in the water. I don't want it to be floating high. So that's why I trim them. And I want the fish to see the whole body because they do in the natural. All right, so there's the split tails. I don't like the way those look, but I'm gonna leave them. Not that happy with it.
Okay, a couple more questions when you're ready, Tom.
Yeah, go ahead.
Diane wants to know, what is your most productive fly that has caught the most fish? Kind of your go-to favorite fly.
Rusty spinner. That's true.
And Scott wants to know, hopefully, I think I pronounced this right, what color of Coq de Leon do you think is the most versatile?
I don't know. I don't bother with the color of Coq de Leon because I'm only using a couple fibers, and I don't think the fish can see the color. It looks like mayfly tails, and I would just get whatever you can. I'm taking one of those tails off. I'm cheating. I'm cutting one of those tails off because I didn't like it.
Okay, and Adam's asking, can dubbing dry out?
Dubbing
What dubbing wax solves?
Dubbing can never dry out. Dubbing can never dry out. I got dubbing that's probably 50 years old. Dubbing will not dry out. We put silicone treatments on the flies after we tie them, but no, dubbing can't dry out. Okay, so we're gonna put a different wing on this, and I'm not gonna tie the body yet. I'm gonna put the wing on now. So what I'm gonna do is take some EP fiber, and this is kind of a grayish yellowish, which I really like for spinner wings. And I'm going to take a small amount of it. I don't want much. Just want about that much. And I'm going to cut that. And then I'm going to take 2 to 3 strands of crystal flash. This stuff. It's all about the flash. You guys all know where that quote came from? It's all about the flash. If you don't, you have not seen the best fly fishing video, in my opinion, ever made. It's called Streamers Inc. Streamers, INC. It's very, very good film. And then what I'm going to do is just cut this so it's flush. And I'm kind of rolling that crystal flash around. You could throw in any kind of flash you want, any color. It doesn't matter. I just like, and you don't really need the flash, but it kind of helps me see the fly, and I think it kind of makes them look like the sparkle of those mayfly wings. So I got that flash mixed with the EP fiber, You could use, there's lots of stuff you can use. You can use sculpting fiber, Sculptify, anything that floats well, doesn't absorb water, and is relatively fine will work for this. And then I'm just going to take this, and this wing is too long, I know, but it makes it easy to tie in if it's a little bit longer. So I'm just going to cross over here, couple turns, and then I'm going to go the opposite direction, so kind of like figure eight, but one at a time. And I do that a few times. And then I'm going to turn this sideways so you can see what I'm doing. Then I'm going to take a couple turns of thread around the base of the wing, and you want to put pressure on it in a horizontal. What I'm trying to do is flatten this wing out. So I'm just it's like posting a parachute if you've tied a parachute fly. So I've done the far wing. Now I'm going to do the near wing. And I'm just going around that base. Whoops. Gets a little tricky. Sometimes I'm not used to doing it that way. I'll do it this way.
I've got some questions for you when you're ready.
Yeah.
John wants to know if you are right or left-handed. He noticed that you wind with your right but apply dubbing with your left.
I am very strongly right-handed.
And Larry wants to know what's your best.
It is interesting. I never thought of that before. What was the other question?
Larry would like to know what's your best all-around productive steelhead fly.
I don't have best all-around productive anything flies. What would be really best all-around productive steelhead fly? Probably an egg-sucking leech, I would think, thinking back.
Okay.
So there's the wings, and I'm going to do something else with these wings. I'm going to use super glue. And I know a lot of you know I don't like super glue, but it works really well for this. So I'm going to put just one tiny drop of super glue at the base of these wings, and you'll see why in a second. And I don't want to overdo it, so one tiny drop. That's it. It's going to seep into those wing bases, and what I'm going to do is take either a pair of forceps or very fine tipped pliers. These kind of pliers are really handy for fly tying, for grabbing things and squeezing things and stuff. And I'm just going to flatten where I put that thread, flatten that wing. I learned this from an English magazine a number of years ago. This trick of flattening spinner wings. Because the spinner wings are flat in nature. They're they look flat. And that super glue is going to hold them in that position. Now I see that I got some strands of crystal flash that are going haywire. And I don't need a lot of crystal flash, so I'm just going to cut them out of there. Oh! I don't like them there. All right, now I'm going to trim my wings. And I'll do it this way. I don't normally do it this way, but I want them about a shank length. Don't have them too long. I mean, the spinners do have kind of long wings, but you don't want to go crazy. And yeah, you could fold them up together and do them, but I think you can just fold them up like this and even them out, but it's just as easy to eyeball it, I think. That's a little longer than the other one.
Tom, are you up for a non-tying related question?
Yeah.
Aaron would like to know, he said that your episode on carp fishing is one of his favorite fishing videos. He always wanted to ask if nymphing techniques, maybe especially Euro or larger size nymphs, would work on muddier water carp in small rivers.
It might. The problem is, I think the problem with that is, if you can't see carp, you really have to get a fly in a carp's face. You really got to get it right in front of them. They don't see that well, and they don't move that far for a fly. And I think you would have to cover an awful lot of water doing that Euro nymphing in carp waters. You could certainly try it, but I wouldn't. Not to say it's not going to work, but I wouldn't. You really got to.
Our friend from Norway is asking, what would you recommend as good wing material?
EP fiber, EP trigger point fibers. Let's see, I got some other stuff here. EP fiber is, one of my favorites in gray, or maybe mix a little gray and a little tan, or don't make it too light. Don't use white stuff. There used to be this thing called a polywing spinner back in the early days of synthetics, and the stuff is white. It was white, and yeah, it was highly visible, but I think it turned the fish off. And then EP Sculptifly fibers have already got that flash in it, so you could use that. But just standard EP fibers I think are great. But any synthetic, any kind of glassy synthetic that doesn't hold water will work. Again, Antron holds a lot of water, so it might work. But I've tried. We use Antron for shucks and stuff where we want it to sink a little bit. All right, so now I'm gonna go almost to the back, and I'm gonna again do that dubbing thing. And I'm gonna make a longer dubbing noodle because I'm gonna go right up around the wings with this. So I'm starting really skinny. Notice I'm starting really skinny, and then that's too lumpy. So what I'm gonna do is just come in and tweak that a little bit, pull it apart. And then I can go back. And you can really taper this by adding a little bit of dubbing or tweaking it with your fingers or sliding it back and forth. You can be really precise. Now that's way too much that I just put on there. So I'm going to just kind of pull it. I got a little gap there. I'm going to slide that up to get rid of the gap. Okay, I may even have to add some here, but let's try it. So here we go. I'm going to wind back to that ball. Hopefully my dubbing will start at just the right moment. And then I'm going to maybe hold those tails when I take the first turns of dubbing. And then I'm applying a lot of pressure to the thread here. I want a nice, really tight, skinny body. If you're tying a mayfly dun or an emerger, you don't want your body this skinny. They have quite a bit of bulk. But spinners, if you look at a picture of a mayfly spinner in a book, they're very skinny. Now I'm going to take some turns through those wings. I'm just going back and forth, building up a little thorax there. Because these things do have a kind of a built-up thorax. And now I don't have enough dubbing left. So, no problem. Well, it is a problem if you drop your dubbing. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of dubbing. And if I had too much, I'd just pluck it off at this point. So I'm going to add a little bit of dubbing just to finish off that thorax and head.
Okay, we've got a couple questions when you're ready.
Okay, let me, I can talk and tie. Go ahead. And then I'm just gonna finish off with a nice little tapered head there, and there we go. That is a deadly spinner imitation. It really is an effective fly. And there's lots of ways you can tie spinners. I've only showed you 2 ways. Another way to do it is to tie it like I tied that compare spinner, and then crush the hackle and figure 8 around it, so that you and wind dubbing like I did here, so that instead of these synthetic wings here, you would have hackle fibers, and you gather them the same way. It's a little bit more difficult to do. And that is the end of the spinner. So I think it looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. I'd fish that. It's sparkly. It's about the right profile, and it's good enough to fool. It's good enough to fool a fish if your presentation is right. That's always the critical thing. All right. Questions, Julia?
Okay, Susanna wants to know if you could suggest an alternative to EP fibers.
Sculptify fibers.
Okay. And John wants to know what vise you're using.
I am using an old Renzetti. I think it's the presentation. Unfortunately, I can't see this because I can't get it right because my monitor is wrong. It's an old Renzetti. I think it's a presentation. I have a Renzetti and a Regal. I love both of them. I kind of switch off.
Okay, and Keith would like to know if you have a preference for float for these flies.
Yeah, I like the Orvis gel to start out, and then once, if the fly isn't floating well enough, I will add the desiccant, the Orvis desiccant powder, and I don't know exactly what we call them.
I'll put links to it in the...
Yeah.
And Roger Bird would like to know, why do you choose yellow thread over brown or a darker color?
Well, I thought I said at the beginning, maybe I forgot. I usually do use brown or maroon or something, Roger, but I was looking at some pictures of parallel spinners last night in my photo archives, and they had kind of a yellowish tinge to them, so that's why I used yellow. Probably easier to see it too when we're doing this.
Okay, great. Don't think we have any. 1 second, let me just make sure. Scott wants to know, how many days into this will we get a lesson on making chocolate?
I'm not a chocolate expert. Well, you're going to have to find a chocolate expert to figure out why this thing. Why?
Okay, and then Tim says, thank you, Tom. Love the simplicity and sparseness. I find basic impressionistic flies work well, and the fish don't seem fussy. And let's see. I think that's all the comments, or all the questions, rather. One last call for questions.
I'm trying to come in really tight to this fly, as tight as I can.
often you plan on doing these. And Ross asked if you plan on doing a saltwater fly soon.
Yeah, I'm going to do a Clouser Minnow on Friday. How's that?
And you're doing them how often?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday we're doing them. Till further notice.
Okay. All right. Just a lot of people are saying thank you for your time, and these are awesome, and they appreciate that you're doing this.
Well, thank you all for tuning in and hanging out and keeping me company this afternoon. I appreciate all of you watching, and I hope that you tied along with us.
Roger Bird says it's whiskey time in Texas.
You know, Roger, it's almost whiskey time here. It's almost rum time in Vermont, so or wine. I haven't decided yet. I'm running out of Cuban rum very quickly.
All right.
Okay, guys, thank you.